This evening marks an extraordinary journey into the heart of marketing, a discipline that has the power to move people, spark ideas, and redefine the way we see the world. The theme of today's conclave, Mastering Marketing in a Digital First World, is not just a topic, but rather a mission. In an age where technology evolves faster than ever, marketing stands as the bridge between innovation and impact. It's where creativity meets purpose, where strategies are built and not just sold, uh, and we inspire people, connect them, and believe in shaping the future. Marketing at its core has always been about one thing, and that's stories. The stories that captivate us, connect us, and ultimately stay with us. Whether it's a brand that makes us feel understood, a campaign that inspires action, or an ad that sparks a cultural shift, it's always the stories that we remember. And in today's digital first world, the way we tell those stories is evolving faster than ever. While we tell great stories, we also require robust operations, supply chains, business development strategies, and innovative retail solutions to bring these stories to life and ensure they reach the right audience at the right time. Today's panelists, with their deep expertise in these areas, remind us that impactful storytelling is not just about creativity, it's about building the systems and strategies that support and amplify those stories. As a marketer, you need to be inspired by creativity. To become a thought leader, you need to observe thought starters, and to be a trailblazer, you need to understand trailmakers. This conclave is a platform to explore these questions, push boundaries, and ignite new possibilities. With that in mind, let us now turn to our esteemed panelists, each of whom has played a pivotal role in shaping all the brands that they've worked at. Firstly, we have Mr. Narendra Pratap Singh. He is currently the Director of Business Development at Samsonite. He has had a stellar career spanning over 3 decades in sales, marketing, and retail development. Mr. Singh has been instrumental in establishing Samsonite's retail footprint across India and Southwest Asia. His vision and leadership have earned him the prestigious Jesse Schroeder Global Award. And he continues to inspire as a mentor and speaker at leading institutions such as the IITs, IIMs, and now Geo Institute. Then we have Mr. Aviral Chopra, who is a trailblazer in operations and supply chain management. Mr. Chopra has been at the forefront of innovation in the quick commerce industry as the ex-head of supply chain at Blinkit. A gold medalist from IIT Kanpur, his career reflects a deep commitment to excellence with impactful contributions at leading companies like HUL and Blinkit. His ability to craft innovative strategies and lead dynamic teams has set him apart as a transformative leader in his field. And then finally, we have Mr. Maneesh Mittal, who is the Senior Vice President at Reliance Brands Limited. He is a seasoned leader with a proven track record of driving high growth outcomes. Mr. Mittal has an extensive experience in retail and travel organizations. His innovative approach to integrating technology with strategic business goals has positioned him as a key influencer. So each of our panelists brings with them a wealth of experience and unique perspectives that promise to enrich today's discussion. And to guide us through our discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Henry John, who is a good friend and a fellow batchmate from the same batch of PGP management. With his keen insights, I believe that he has the ability to steer this conversation. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for those warm introductions. I want to set the tone for the conclave. We begin with a few questions that I would be asking the panelists, followed by a Q&A session. We'll end the conclave with closing remarks from each of our panelists so that we have like a much better evaluation of time and efficiency as well. Mr. Narendra, I would like to start with you. As a global brand like Samsonite, how do you balance the consistency of message with the need to adapt to diverse cultural markets like India or overseas while leveraging digital technology?
See, the customer behavior pattern it do not changes if you look at Europe, US, or India. Frankly speaking, the target audience one, the the South Bombay customer, the South Delhi customer, and European, the target audience customer, or maybe American, they behave more or less the same. The requirement, the demand towards the quality, the demand towards the services remains the same. What you see it as a change is the country as a whole. So if you compare country as a whole, America versus India, you'll not be able to correlate and connect anywhere. But my target audiences are being the same. Our products, the quality, the services. If I keep meeting up the customer's demand and their requirements, I will be able to manage even the the deepest part of the Africa, because even they will behave the same. You won't be surprised. I'm not so surprised to even mention you the example of Pakistan. I've been to Pakistan maybe 10, 15 times because of my business reason. No, the reason because that's not a place to. Rather, my US visa got stuck because of he saw so many stamps, and she asked me that you visited Pakistan. I said yes. Do you have a plan to visit? I said yes. She said, what makes you to go to Pakistan? I said, because that's the nearest country for me to manage the business. Otherwise, I have to tell my counterpart, the US counterpart, to send people from there, and it's too long a distance. Oh, so you work for what? I said, Samsonite. Okay. So it's not a best place to be there. But even the customers from Lahore, or maybe the Northwest Frontier, or from Rawalpindi or Multan, they used to behave the same way the way your Delhi customer behaves. So from that perspective, I don't have to do special things for the country as such. So yeah, there will be various other inputs which will be required. Like for example, the number of elites in India will be so less that you can't operate and manage a company basis that, and therefore we ended up having American Tourister.
Correct.
To cater to the demand of the balanced set of customers who are sizable in number, you need to address them in terms of your price, your product, the colors. Like for example, Samsung do not offers you red, blue, burgundy. The Indians, they prefer they will never ever buy a black bag and give it as a gift during the marriage. The daughter's marriage, meaning you have to give some kind of those fancy colors. So since that cannot be met through Samsonite, we can change the dynamics and the conceptual design concept of Samsonite, and therefore we introduce American Tourister. And now we are going to have third brand called Chameleon, and upper end definitely we have two more. So that's how we are handling.
Thank you so much. My next question, Mr. Maneesh. Exclusivity is a cornerstone of luxury retail. Given that you have a lot of experience with RBL, how do brands maintain their exclusivity while leveraging a mass reach to the audience at large?
That's a fair question, but again, I don't know how many people here are familiar with Reliance brands. The word Reliance, possibly yes, but Reliance brands?
Yes.
Wonderful, okay. So, given that you know that we run the top 100 brands in the country from a luxury and premium perspective, the question is very valid, right? And typically, in my experience, one can take two different approaches to reaching out to this luxury customer. You can choose to be a Ferrari, which is something that everybody is going to research on and want to know about, want to aspire to at some point in time, and do a lot of that organically, rather than actually spending money behind chasing everyone. And then participate in things like events where your positioning gets put up in a certain manner and therefore you are associated with certain activities, events, sports, whatever else, right? On the other hand, you can also be a little more quiet, discreet luxury brand, which is a lot of the brands that we deal in typically fall into that bucket, where the brand is known for what the brand is rather than being a mass kind of a known to everybody kind of brands. If I talk about a Tiffany, because I'm mentioning the word Tiffany, I'm assuming all of you have heard of Tiffany as a brand. But if I were to ask you to name the top jewelry brands in the country, I don't think it would figure in the top 25. Fair? In light of this exact almost contradiction or paradox. We're very particular that because most of our brands we're dealing with an exclusive set of customers, we actually do not do mass communication.
Okay.
So even in a media like digital, which everybody believes is very mass and very wide reaching, etc., we actually pick and choose our digital marketing strategies to target a very narrow subset. I use this example often. My counterparts in other parts of Reliance, whether it's a Reliance Digital or a JioMart, all of that, they have a 3-day campaign which targets more people than I target in the entire year. Right? My total target audience in the country is the top 3% of India's customer base. That does not even cause a dent when you talk about digital marketing.
Yeah.
So the challenge for us more is how do you pick and choose those audiences? How do we get more analytical about identifying the right cohorts to target through the tools that are available, right? At the end of the day, I'm targeting through a Google, through a Meta, through third-party networks. What kind of targeting capabilities do those tools provide me? What kind of surrogates can I use to find indicators of consumption, indicators of income, indicators of interest? Understanding that interest and intent are two very different things. Meta is all about interest. Classic example, Edamama is a brand promoted by Alia Bhatt. My traffic is out through the roof. Bulk of that traffic comes from Alia Bhatt's social handles. Typically teenage boys. None of them are buying. Good problem to have. They hopefully will influence others at some point in time. But I have to be very mindful that I don't start remarketing to those audiences because I'll just be putting money down the drain. Right? So what do I do there? I look at audiences that give me results on conversion and then remarket to those audiences and then create lookalikes of those and then create surrogates around that in my Meta and my Google and my third-party marketing. So it's about being very selective in terms of how and who you market to. It definitely is not, even for a brand like Superdry or Hamleys or Mothercare, which are much more democratic than some of my other brands like Tiffany, Bali, etc. Right? Even for those, my audience sizes are extremely limited. And therefore, as I said, it's about analytics, it's about getting to understand the customer and therefore understanding the tastes and interests of the customer and what interests to therefore go after in the digital world in order to get the best results. And it's a lot of experimentation. Without experimentation, I don't think we can survive in the digital world. The good thing about the digital world, of course, is that you can get instant results. Everything is very attributable, which means that you can know what worked and what didn't work. So if you are agile in your thought process, you create multiple scenarios, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing. That's essentially the cornerstone of how we approach the market.
Perfect. Sounds great. Aviral, my next question would, rising operational costs and razor-thin margins is what quick commerce, I'm assuming, is operating on. How do you balance hyper-speed logistics with financial sustainability? And are there any unconventional revenue streams that come in through to quick commerce? Or, how do you disrupt the entire traditional e-commerce model?
Sure, thanks. Interesting and heavy question upfront. So I think let me break down the problem into smaller parts. First is, for example, the need and the evolution of quick commerce. Why did this actually come up? And when it came up, actually, there was a lot of angst from a lot of customers saying that we don't need stuff in 10 minutes. Why the hell are you giving stuff to us in 10 minutes? Well, the small set of customers who started using it, the early adopters, we realized that the stickiness of that was very, very high. So, for example, couples who are working sometimes with a young kid, people who have pets, for example, and don't find the need for pet care in the vicinity, some very niche brands that normally you don't get in your local kiranas or the DMarts of the world. And obviously the point of convenience came into picture. And finally, the kick of instant gratification. I think that was also and always there. I think this led to this becoming a bigger phenomena that we are currently seeing. And I think initially the trust was, the doubt was also there whether the brands are genuine, whether they'll actually be able to sustain and be viable. Can they actually deliver in 10 minutes and at a scale of, let's say, 500 stores? 10, 20 stores, 100 stores maybe is doable. What about at larger scale? But I think the signs that the founders initially got were extremely encouraging, not just with regards to the stickiness, but it was also about bringing an unorganized sector for which into possibly into an organized domain. For example, if there are certain festivals and you need puja assortment, you have to go to multiple shops and identify places. There is Halloween, you want costumes, there is Friendship Day, Valentine Day, and you want the most premium of chocolates, and you may not sometimes find them. Similarly, we see so many societies here, and possibly some Bengalis living here, and they want Durga Puja need items specifically customized for them. Do they get it? Do they always plan for it? Are they able to plan for it? And when you bring this unorganized sector and disrupt the moat that possibly the big brands had, you're able to command a certain extra margin there. Similarly, most of the people who are using quick commerce are in the need of mid to up level brands, and brands also want to reach the customers directly and faster, and that's where they are willing to pay the additional margin. And obviously, as the traffic on the quick commerce started to increase, the need for advertisements, the need for visibility became an additional revenue stream, so to say. However, as most of you understand and appreciate that it is a highly operations intensive business. So when we commit a 8-minute, 10-minute, 12-minute delivery, we bloody well deliver it in those 8, 10 or 12 minutes. And that's something that we track per day, per hour, per order at a very heavy execution scale. The kind of product bandwidth, the data science teams that we have to anticipate all of this is a huge cost. Even if you order a single item in your cart, and I did two just myself, the rider has to still come all the way from the store to your place and come back, and that's a very linear expense. That every order you incur that expense. And how do you optimize for that? And how do you leverage data to optimize your last mile, your store operations, your replenishment from the warehouse to the stores, and end-to-end supply chain all the way to the vendors like the HULs, the Nestle's, P&G's of the world. I think cracking this problem one piece at a time through very data incentive plus operational rigor gives you the bottom line benefits. And obviously, once you start leveraging your premium brands, the disorganized to the organized sector, breaking the distribution moat, attracting more traffic on the platforms, creates the top line revenue streams, which ultimately helped Blinkit become profitable, I think, a year back.
That answers it very clearly. Mr. Narendra, we had a question. We have a lot of students from the artificial intelligence and data science background. We want to understand, and this is actually an open question, even Mr. Maneesh, for you also. How do you envision augmented reality, virtual reality, or deep learning, computer vision to create memorable experiences in retail, be it luxury or be it Samsonite also?
Earlier, we did not have any department called analysis, frankly speaking.
Okay.
We used to have the sales, the marketing, the retail, and the retail will have operations and project.
Okay.
So this never existed. But now we have got a specific role play by a set of whatever the limited number of people to understand the pattern of behavioral pattern of customers, which is changing rapidly than the earlier time. Because the shift today's customer at certain price bracket. I'm not talking about Samsonite. When I speak, I'm talking to you on behalf of all the set of brands which we are handling. Mm-hmm. Because Samsonite will have a different behavioral pattern. That customer I won't lose. That's the kind of confidence, the overconfidence we carry. That my customer Samsonite will come to Samsonite. But I'm talking about the American Tourister and the Chameleon and those foreign brands, whereby people are switching over from A to B to C at very at ease. There is no reason for them to say why. So in that case, we need to understand why are they shifting. Where am I missing? So, for example, without naming the brand, there is a brand which has become very popular online. I don't want to advertise anybody, so it became so popular that started to create a dent for that very price segment of my another brand. And then we had to get into the pen and paper. Yeah, क्या कर रहा है वो बंदा? And somehow he was doing something which we always have been discarding it off by saying नहीं यार इतना कचरा नहीं करना है, प्राइस में इतना कचरा नहीं करना है, कलर में ये इतना नहीं करना है. Nobody uses white. Actually, nobody uses white, but white looks so nice on the screen at least, right? You want to wear white, but what if your market, if you're a person working in the field, every now and then, definitely you will switch over to gray or maybe something which can help you to manage your day to day. Similarly, whatever we have been discarding it off all throughout, we started to implement only by understanding where the customers were moving from ours to somebody else and what were the reasons. So this data analytics definitely is going to be a key factor in the time to come. Of course, it's a little hard to break the mindset that it has X percentage of influence. That we will sooner or later will understand it better, that what percentage it really helps you to manage your business. But definitely it has got a role play, and we have started to use it. We are making good use for the category of products which are in the mid to lower price segment. The premium, definitely we don't have much of use for it.
Makes sense.
If I were to take the second part of what you asked,
Yeah.
right, the AR/VR.
Yeah.
So I've been involved with different things in AR/VR for the last 8-9 years now, and I maintain my view still the same today as it was then. AR/VR XR, which is mixed reality, are tools in the hands of a marketer. They are not yet a customer requirement, but they are definitely something that allows you to get the customer's attention. So if in this journey that I've seen, and I've played with multiple tools in different scenarios, right? I haven't yet seen a tool that actually creates business by itself. But what I have seen are tools which create interest in the brand, which create curiosity about the brand and therefore get a little bit of experimentation going for a brand. I've seen tools that allow me to create a little amount of stickiness with some amount of customers. Just to again give you, the kind of width of options that we're talking about here when it comes to AR, VR, XR. On the one hand, typically AR, VR today is more associated with online because we believe AR, VR would work more online than in the stores. Not necessarily true. Think about it like this. The dream journey that many of us in the industry envisage is a scenario where you walk into a store today. Imagine you walking into a pod within the store. There's a 3D machine that actually scans your body all around, creates the dimensions, stores those dimensions against your profile, assuming you've given the permission for it. And now you've solved the size problem forever. You don't ever need to try a product from a size perspective. Right? You'll still want to try it because you want to see how it looks on you before you make a decision. But at least the size problem is solved. Imagine now that you've identified the right size in a brand for yourself. The next time you don't ever want to go back to the store because you've got that size profile. You go onto the brand's website and you're able to continuously just place orders with that right size, regardless of which brand you're looking for, what fit you're looking for, because the fit will automatically adapt to the size profile that has been created for you. Right? Extensive use case, lots of people trying to get in that space, but you know where this breaks? This does not break in the science part of it, it breaks in the art part of it. Let me explain that. The pods for measuring your body by scanning exist today, they work to millimetric perfection. They are able to predict within that, even if you're wearing a shapeless dress, they're able to predict what your body shape would be based on various parameters. The problem that we face is that when I create that body shape of yours and put it into a computer and then I show you a product on top of that, how that product looks on you today does not reflect how that product looks in reality. Why? Because we've still not gotten there in technology. And that is the one single biggest challenge in this space currently that technology is trying to grapple with, to make that product look flowing correctly. And honestly, some companies have now even solved that problem, and yet the problem remains. Because to make it look right on your body shape, the product's being extended. It's being stretched, which is not how a real product works. And until that problem is solved, saying which size looks how on me, this is not a commercial application yet. Lots of try-ons exist across, but go to any of them, most of them have now become and also have kind of a background information, and very few are actually using it commercially. Same thing in the space of beauty. Across brands, whether you go to a Tira, whether you go to a Nykaa, whether you go to any of these platforms, you will find virtual try-ons, right? How many people actually use a virtual try-on to determine what product they're going to buy at the end of the day? If you do a poll, even it's less than 1% of users effectively even using the tool. Why? I mean, most of you use some filter on your camera, right? There you're okay with trying out different things, but on a third-party app, a Nykaa or a Tira or whatever else, you're not using. It's just a consumer mindset. You're not yet convinced that this is the right thing for me. And yet money is being invested behind these technologies, because at some point in the future, it is going to become the default. You're not going to go into a store in the future and try a lipstick on your hand as you do today. You're only going to try it on virtual. We're still some time away. But technology in that space has now reached a place where you can actually very genuinely see what a product looks like on you. In the beauty space, that technology is there. Now it's a customer adoption problem. The adoption will come, and as it comes, it will gain more traction. There's another perspective to it. When I talk about a brand like Hamleys, one of the, we run the Hamleys stores worldwide. Yeah. One of the things we're talking about is how do I create experiences in the store? So I'm no longer talking about AR, VR, XR from a perspective of how the product looks on you. I'm actually thinking of creating virtual zones within the stores that I run, where I create virtual reality-based gaming environments to engage customers. So in retail, I mean, I can go on forever. There's a number of things that AR, XR, VR is doing. I genuinely believe that currently a lot of it is more marketing tools in the hand of a good marketer can give you decent results, used sporadically and not used as business as usual. But over a period of time, we are moving to an era where everything is going to be virtual. Your physical experiences you will want to have more because you want to touch, feel, try the product. And I was reading about this beautiful tool that somebody recently was talking about. It's still in prototype stage, but it allows you to smell the same smells that you would get in a store. It allows you to get the feel of the texture. It has a tactile changing surface. You touch it, you can actually feel the texture. We're moving towards a world where 10-minute delivery, people would have said, why do I need it, right? Why do you need a tactile sensor? Yeah. We're moving towards a world where we may choose never to get out of our houses. And these technologies will definitely come in handy then.
So if we actually choose to not get out of our houses,
creating the market there.
Supply chain is probably going to be the most crucial thing ever. And how would you design supply chain in areas that have just probably gotten a whole hang of the internet penetration, and they're actually very heavily looking to explore e-commerce as an option? How does supply chain prepare itself for pin codes that are not currently under your radar? How do you prepare yourself? Do you have algorithms that work for it, or is there anything that what goes behind it exactly?
I think again, so just to give you, obviously you're asking in context of quick commerce. Most of the quick commerce have doubled over the last 1 year across platforms as an industry, and the next 1 year is expected to, I think, double again. That's the broad direction in which it is headed. And where is this incremental growth coming from? Some bit of it is obviously from the existing cities. Is Bombay, every society still covered? Possibly not. Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Calcutta, the tier ones. Are they still exhaustively covered? They're not. And that's the clear opportunity which is there. The next side of opportunity is growing to new cities. And that's where the question is that which city should I launch first to give me the right amount of growth and profitability? And for that, what direct and indirect metrics can I have, measures can I have, which is not just with regards to the macroeconomic factors, but also with regards to the habit of the consumers. For example, just there are some cities where possibly the senior citizens, the retired citizens are on the higher side, maybe government officials are on the higher side, and people who may have help in the house at all point of time. And there the quick commerce adoption, the willingness to go out, etc., or maybe stay at home and order everything at home may be very different from a city which has a very high young population, possibly a college population, and so on and so forth. And similarly, from a college kind of profile, will you always be able to sell the most premium products, for example, the top end products that he was alluding to? May not be the case. You may still need your within 100, within 200, the average selling price there will be much less compared to your normal city kind of requirement. And that's where the data science models actually help, which help you determine that this geography, this is the kind of ASP profile and the margin profile that you will get. And hence, if we were to open the next set of 50 stores, where should we place our bets on? So I think that is the kind of thought process that goes behind deciding, because you'll always be constrained on capital, you'll always be constrained on resources. Okay, at a time you may be able to open maybe 20, if not 20, 100, but which 100 out of the 1,000 will it be? It will be a very sharp and specific decision that you will need to consciously take, which determines the course of your overall PNL.
That's
Sorry, one more part was with regards to how do you prepare your supply chain to deliver that. So I think that's where the nuances. So, for example, you have to be slightly more deterministic with regards to the scale that you will get to in the next 3 months, 6 months, with regards to the set of stores that you've opened, and accordingly design your supply chain in reverse. And obviously, you'll never be right 100% of the time. And how agile are you with regards to your ability to create strong feedback loops within your execution, so as to realize that this is something which has not worked, and how do I scale it back so that I don't burn further, or how do I scale it up if the adoption has been very high. For example, Blinkit launched a store in Haridwar, Dehradun, and I think we had anticipated the store to reach a certain number in 6 months, and we were hitting that number in the first 2 months itself. And within first 1 month, we realized that we are into trouble with the kind of supply chain that we've built around it. So one option was obviously to roll it back. New set of warehouses creation, store creation was becoming a genuine problem. So we had a way around it to figure out. We engaged with even the vendor partners to supply that kind of assortment. Similarly, we launched one more store, a set of stores in another city, where we went wrong with the assortment that the customers wanted. And we realized that the growth is not coming because the searches are what we had anticipated versus the actual searches were quite different. And that's where you need to take sharp, fast, aggressive calls sometimes. But the point here is that you need to be monitoring those data points very, very closely at the highest granularity for you to correct for what has gone wrong. You'll always go wrong. But what determines your success is how quickly you are able to fix the wrongs that were there. So I think that's how you broadly prepare your supply chain. I hope that answers.
Yeah, perfect. Mr. Maneesh, Reliance Brands Limited as a group manages something like a Gucci and an LV at the same time. How do you make sure that your messaging is different or your communication is different, at the same time serving both the brands in the way they are expected or in the priority they expect to be served at?
I think we have one very big advantage, which is that nobody knows Reliance brands, right? Unlike a Shopper's Stop or a Lifestyle, where the store is known as Shopper's Stop, but they're selling multiple brands. We're not like that. The customer is, we don't do Gucci, but the customer is looking for Tiffany, the customer is looking for Bali, or we're selling the customer to Tiffany, Bali, to me, whatever. But for us, each brand is an independent entity, and we like to believe we create temples of the brand in the country. Our specialization is making brands work for the elite in India. And the secret sauce for that includes a lot of focus on brand customer mapping. It's all about how does this brand operate globally? What are the best practices that we can leverage from that brand? What are the messaging tonalities? What channels they use, etc.? How do we adapt that to the Indian consumer? Because for this segment particularly, as NP also said earlier, this customer is extremely well traveled. They'll experience the brand in India, they'll experience the brand internationally. And unless I'm able to create a superlative experience for them in India that matches anything and everything that they would have gotten internationally, the customer is not going to shop here. They're going to shop in the next travel. Right? So it's a lot about understanding the customer, which I will keep harping again and again, because particularly for my segment, when I have only such a small audience of customers to look after, I need to literally know every customer by name, particularly in that segment of the market. I'm exaggerating for effect. Communication, therefore, has to follow the brand guidelines of that particular brand, adapted to Indianness, Indian tonality, etc., which is done by a set of specialists. We keep our people working on a brand typically independent of people working on competitive brands, for example. And the purpose is to be able to create Chinese walls, right? If the same customer is a customer of Coach and Michael Kors, and Coach and Michael Kors come from competing house of brands globally, the fact that they've trusted us respectively to run both the brands in India means that we have to now live up to their trust. We're possibly the only place globally where the same entity is running both the brands. We create very strict partitions between the brands. The places where we standardize, we run 100 plus brands, right? So we do standardize a lot of things. What do we standardize? We standardize infrastructure, the technology, processes, SOPs. We standardize a lot of the HR processes, etc. We create centers of excellence for different functions in order to bring in best practices of the function to all the brands. But each brand runs its own customer communication, customer segmentation, targeting, all of that, including assortment finalization. What assortment for which brand? There's a team for the brand that would take care of that, because every customer's taste for different brands would be different. You cannot mix that up across brands. We do bring some of it together. We do have a platform called Agio Lux, where you can find all these brands together, where we do take advantage of some of the cross-pollination of customers and moving customers across brands. But fundamentally, it is by strict isolation and creating more standardized platforms and less standardized messaging.
Perfect.
I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, that sounds great. So Narendra, you mentioned about the customer loyalty or your confidence in the customer loyalty for Samsonite. How have you built that up over the course of years, including digital, including the old traditional forms of media? So in a country like India, how do you build that kind of loyalty?
So let me start with the background of the brand. Like for example, Samsonite was built, it was launched in the year 1910. So it's roughly about 114-year-old brand. How the brand was built upon was the singular reason that they are into innovation, number one. Second, the most durable. They write and they claim and they prove it to be the most, because they've been always ahead of the time. Yes, as far as you see the industry. Like for example, the aircraft interior used to use PP, polypropylene. I'm talking about the way back 1960s, 50s or 60s. And other than the aircraft interior, nobody used to use this material commercially. But Samsonite was the first one to pick up that. For example, carbon fiber.
Yeah.
You must have seen, if anybody remembers the advertising of Samsonite, whereby you see a road roller crushing the whole bag, and the guy comes back and he pushes it from all four corners and it comes back to the shape. Now, can you imagine this is possible? If somebody could have thought of it, maybe before the product was made, if somebody would have mentioned that aisa hota hai, will somebody believe it? No. So how the brand was built was exactly basis this. The kind of innovations they spend upon, the time, the money, the whole psychology. Like for example, our designer, the global designer, is going to retire in 2030. Yeah, 30. The next set of designer is already inducted
Oh,
in 2018.
okay.
So, and that 18 is not a junior guy. Huh?
Yeah.
He himself, he has been a designer in Honda. So, can you imagine that how many years he's being given to get into the DNA of the designing process? And that is how these brands are built. It's so difficult to copy. Earlier I used to think that जब हम देखते हैं प्रोडक्ट तो लगता है यार इसकी तो कॉपी करके कोई कुछ कर सकता है बट what do you do the next? You can copy this bottle today, but what if tomorrow I come up with the oval and not this but the carbon fiber, not the PE? So they're far ahead of the time. When the World War II erupted, the Samsonite whole factory was converted into a bomb cover making. The whole luggage production stopped, and the US government could depend because the bomb used to get transported from point A to B and they used to burst on the way. And the only company which they could rely upon was Samsonite. So we were making the bomb shell covers. So what I'm trying to say in short, cutting it to coming back to the reality is that the kind of faith and the trust you create, not in a year, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. These brands actually they are much ahead of the time. First of all, in terms of innovation, thought process, design, customer needs. So all that once is fulfilled, then you create this kind of faith. Why I'm saying so confidently that Samsung customer नहीं जाता है किसी के पास. There are guys who switched over to something else, they came back again. Because it's so deep. Like for example, you see a wheel as a wheel, correct?
Yeah.
One more example as a layman, huh? Because there are so many technical aspects that I can't really deal out everything. But maybe just example of a wheel. Simple wheel, you see it as a wheel, which will be generally, what will you imagine it as? It must have been fixed on some shaft and attached to the bag, correct? Yeah? Looks so simple. Now it is not that simple. You look at bag A, bag B, bag C, bag D, you'll find everybody is adopting different technology.
Okay.
But I can claim and say that we use the most advanced one. Although it's a simple wheel.
Yeah.
You know, 5, 6 components. In maybe product B, you may find a shaft and the wheel mold is put on it, and there's an amount of rubber or metallite is put on it, and you just wheel it out, right? The Samsonite has got a shaft, and the bearing.
Okay.
The bearing consists of oil. When you move with the heat, the oil surfaces up. It lubricates the next surface,
Okay.
the next ring, and thereafter you have got a mold of a wheel, and thereafter you have got a rubber, and rubber is a natural rubber, not the bakelite. Now, can you imagine? These 5 components is not so difficult to copy. But what if somebody copies, then I will be somewhere else. So, they create experience, they create confidence, trust by virtue of doing things which they do it for the first time. So that has been the reason for them to be ahead of many other brands.
This is actually an open-ended question, and I think we discussed it when we were in the conference room also. Operational agility across industries, and how does supply chain manage to listen to everybody, including marketing, business development, sales? Everybody comes up with X amount with their own wish list that supply chain should fulfill. How do you, not only in quick commerce but also in e-commerce or in any operational setting, how does supply chain manage to task out your priorities? So do you task it based on the customer requirement or the volume of orders that come in or the value of orders that come in? How does supply chain manage to segregate their top priorities?
First principles. I think it's how, for example, you have 1 month left and 6 subjects to cover. How do you prioritize? So I think you have to go back to basics on that. But I think most organizations, unless they realize that all of them are working for the end consumer and not for a sales or a marketing or a finance, I think you're on the right path. And if you're prioritizing keeping that in mind, and as a leader, it's your responsibility to make the other functions understand that, I think you're pretty much sorted. Because if in the organization that culture, the ethos of customer first, consumer first is there, I think it becomes a well-oiled machine who knows where they want to head, and the trade-offs will be well understood by each function, and each function will have their own set of trade-offs, be it marketing or sales or any other function for the matter. But if the end goal remains clear, for example, in the context of Blinkit, you would want to double the number of stores, but you also, for example, a year back had an assortment which was X and you wanted to 2x the assortment also. So, and for 2x assortment, you, for example, don't even know how to keep 2x assortment within that same store and within that warehouse. And obviously, you realize that 2x is non-negotiable because the customer is asking me for those products. He may possibly be asking for a 3x. So, I need to figure this solution out, and possibly a trade-off with regards to an internal metric has to be let go in the short term to cater to that end goal that the customer does want pet and baby and chocolate and festival and so, and multiple festivals and a late night party and a early morning health freak and so on and so forth, and all kind of customers are there living in the same society, same vicinity, and you can't say okay, I will cater it to you but not to you, and hence what you end up deprioritizing is something which is, I think, more of an internal metric. That's how I would say. But if I would encourage Maneesh and NP to also add if they want to on this particular point. I think useful for students, but
I think I'll echo everything that you said, and I'll just add. So one of the things that I try to do often for critical functions is to create two tracks, a short-term track and a long-term track. Because very often, otherwise, what I've seen happening is long-term priorities getting derailed by short-term priorities.
Important and the urgent.
Absolutely, right? And unless there is a focus on those two tracks equally, understanding that the long-term track is not going to give us instant results, it is not going to. It's going to be literally things that are not being seen by anybody, no visibility, nothing. But it's an investment you've got to make. That's, at least in my experience, that's really helped us. Make the kind of growth that we've seen for assets. Fix short-term problems, fix short-term issues, grow for short-term, but have a parallel effort going for the long-term. And obviously, you cannot do this for everything. Again, you've got to prioritize there as well, which ones you can afford to do two tracks and where you've got to do one track. But for me, the secret of prioritization is long-term, short-term differentiation.
Maneesh, do you feel attention span, as they claim, has gone very low for people?
You mean there is an attention span anymore? I mean, before I can blink my eye, the bloody thumb is gone up.
Correct.
There is no attention span. There is no loyalty, there is no attention span. Sorry, reality of life. It's the world we live in today.
Okay. But you still have a classroom full of
people who are trying to get both of that, right?
Yeah.
No, so fair. And I think my biggest challenge day in, day out is how do I forget? It's not even about keeping attention right now. It's about getting attention. Once you get attention, I find that getting attention is being at the right place, and keeping attention is showing the right thing. That to me is the way I try to work. What is the right place and what is the right thing? I wish I knew the answer for that all the time. But again, that's where we go back to the experimentation, right? If I'm on a platform where, let's say you're watching a cricket match, and during that cricket match, I'm throwing up an ad for a To-Me luggage as an example. Are you in the mind space to consume that at that point in time? Right? Chances are you're not. On the other hand, if you're at the airport and you're you've got nothing to do, you've got a screen in front of you, the airport is running where you're seeing something about the latest luggage, etc. It's suddenly a little more relevant to what you're doing right now. You can associate it with it better. If I'm able to get that kind of thing is where I get attention. So contextualizing what and where to me is the critical aspect. We found very often one of the things that in my experience people focus a lot on is saying, for example, there's Valentine's Day coming. All my content, a lot of people go, all my content should be Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day. The cost of running a Valentine's Day campaign separately is huge, particularly because everybody else is doing the same thing. CPMs, if any of you understand digital marketing, are through the roof. It just doesn't make sense. What do we try to do instead is we try and keep our BAU campaigns going, business as usual campaigns going. We do not change the creative to suddenly a Valentine's Day creative. We just bring in a little flavor of gifting. The customer knows what gifting in this period means. The customer has gifting in their mind in the right way. I don't need to say Valentine. For Tiffany, I don't need to say Valentine's Day. I do say it sometimes. I don't need. If I just bring in the word gifting, that's enough. I've got the attention. Now, if that attention matches with what that customer's interest at that point in time is, then I will retain that attention for a little longer. Quality of content is critical. Google and Meta both have come out with huge amount of guidelines for people like me who don't understand creative at all, saying this is how you should create creatives for today's audience. They do master classes with our creative teams to tell us, this kind of creative works better than the other kind of creative. Because attention span is shorter, even a 10-second video has so many dynamic motions and movements in it today. It literally, I get dizzy looking at some of these creatives that my team creates, but that apparently is what seems to be getting me the highest click-through rates. Like with everything else in marketing, it keeps coming back to what's your customer up to today. Understanding that and using partners like Google and Meta to help understand what kind of content therefore would work better. But honestly, biggest challenge you ask any retailer today, biggest challenge is that people today don't have any attention span whatsoever.
So Narendra, can you also share your thoughts on that?
The space of the digital whatever the as a brand we have tried to simplify our approach. Whatever we undertake in the part of the Europe and US, we simply just copy paste in India.
Okay.
We don't try and create. We tried, but it did not really work out so well for us. Because sometimes when you are known as a global brand, then don't try to give that regional touch, because probably customers are not really looking at you to be from Tamil Nadu. Bagal wala hai. Surat nahi hai, because you should be seen as a brand from US. So you must have seen those campaigns also. Amitabh Bachchan and those things. Okay. But our approach is simple. There's a global #1 brand. It has got certain DNA, certain approach, and that needs to be spelled out in any and every country in the same manner and at the same time. Because we don't celebrate so many occasions, they're very limited by nature, and therefore those limited occasion, if it happens globally, then you have got the rebound effect. Because people travel, people move from one point to another, and whatever you do in Europe, you immediately see the next day in India. Sitting here, you see my store getting launched in Sweden or maybe in Paris or maybe in UK somewhere. So that makes our life a bit simpler.
Got it.
So I think just to add and build on to what both of them said, one aspect is with regards to attention span, I think you can't fight the trends and human nature. So I think saying that the span has gone low and cribbing about it will not help. You need to figure out your decision and your choices on how you navigate through that and still win in the context in which the consumer landscape is evolving. And to give a couple of examples in that space, for example, if you look at quick commerce and you want to do a Diwali kind of shopping, and you know that the customer has come with certain specific intents to buy. One intent could be your home decoration, that meko lighting lagani hai, I need to do this, that, and figure stuff out. There could be a very specific gifting intent. Yeah. and what is it that we normally gift in those periods. And that is where you plan for it 6 months, 9 months, possibly 1 year ahead, to understand that this is the normal gifting use case which is there. Similarly, sweets is a big use case during that period. Puja, flower, Dhanteras before that, that's where the genesis of a gold silver coin on the platform came. I think if you facilitate that for the end consumer and make things easy for the end user, I think the stickiness, the adoption just explodes. And I think that's all of us as content creators need to figure that out. And I think that's the problem we also face in supply chain, where you have gig workers who are also on the phone and getting them to be productive at all point of time, be it in your store operations, be it in your idle kind of operations. I think those are the kind of challenges that you have. And you build on, solve these problems by realizing that what can I do to do a gamification for him? What can I do, for example, for an instant gratification for him? Can I move to a monthly payout, to a weekly payout, to a daily payout, and so on and so forth? Can I at least start sharing with him his daily earning, hourly earning, and so on and so forth? So he realizes that this is what I intend to do. So that is coming from the context of operations and not just consumers, because many of you will be deployed in different kind of roles, and you need to figure out for that specific role how is it that you adopt your solution in context of the end user, which could be a gig worker in that context.
Thank you so much, Aviral. Before we move on to the audience, one last question that I would really request a response from all of y'all is, clearly there's a lot of tension in the room because placement season is around the corner. And what are the qualities, or what do you look for in, I can't help but put a little more pressure for marketing students. What would you be looking for in an individual who's probably just out of B school, trying to grapple with the industry and trying to get somewhere? There's a lot of information available, there's a lot of things we can do, but how do we play to our strengths, or how do we as professionals train ourselves, and what do you look for in a person that you would probably want to work with, or as a mentor, how would you speak to each of the students here from a very high level perspective?
Let me take that first. That will cover most of the points. When we're looking at freshers, right, very clearly we're not looking at industry experts. Most of us understand that. Therefore, honestly, it is more about what kind of a learning attitude you bring to the table, because if you're coming in with a belief that you're already an expert, there's a problem. I have about 25 years and I'm learning every single day. And I'm surprised every time I do interviews at how few people are actually open to learning. So for me, number one, learning. Number two, attitude. What is your approach to work, to people around you, etc. And assuming that those two are right, then a little bit of, because you had learning ability, how much have you actually picked up in your functional subjects? Have you demonstrated that ability to learn? In our conversation, are you able to, when I'm doing an interview, are you able to articulate some of that and apply that to practical scenarios? Are you able to convert the theory of the textbook into real life situations by, again, we were not expecting you to be experts, but at least are you able to correlate it? Because often there's a big difference between what you read in textbooks versus the kind of situations you face in reality. For me, those are fundamentally what there is. And then, how do you find out about these things? Because the challenge is, each of these is a little softer in its assessment. That's where questions come in about the kind of internships, projects that you've done. What have you done there? How did you apply what you learned to what you did, and what kind of outcomes did you get from there? Did you show the ability to, did you show the interest to even continue finding out what happened with your project after you moved on from the project? Did you learn something if it didn't do well? Or did that just let you, did you let it go? So the reason, at least in my conversations during these interviews, I focus a lot on the projects that you've done, because for me, that's the place where all of the things that I said I'm looking for come together. So That's my answer to the question.
See, I look at it into two parts. Number one is definitely the opportunity. If opportunity prevails, and if there are maybe 10 people striving hard to get in, they need to pass through those processes. Whatever we have defined out, at least in my organization, we have our Southeast Asia headquarter, and in collaboration with Indian HR team, we shortlist the candidates, and then there is a group discussion. So with the basis of that, we are successfully be able to surface out one or two candidates, and then after there is a personal interview to figure out who could be the best for the role. Okay, this is as far as the process is concerned. If at all there is an opportunity, you are there and then you get in. But more important than that is to basically, play a role of adding value. Because my observation, I may not be right, the lot, whatever I have observed in last 2 years or so, or maybe 2.5 years, is the one which is consistently in search of what could be the next.
Wow.
So my advice, I may not be right because I'm maybe in this industry since long, so maybe I'm not born in digital era, so I might be an oldie, not able to connect with today's trend. But unless we do things right today, we can't really expect and hope for the best to happen tomorrow. So while you are today on certain task and something, whatever is there in your plan today, if you have not done the best, can't expect the best to happen the next. So, for example, if at all with some confidence I'm able to speak certain things, like casually we were chatting somewhere, so that was not my job. Actually, that was not my defined role. To place Samsonite at airports, whereas no airport wants me to be there. Because they say people come with a bag and baggages, so why will you try to push a bag to the customer? But I did that. That was a small little contribution I tried to make by virtue of placing the brand Samsonite at the airports. And that is how many other brands woke up, and after 30 years, even the other brand also got up and said, oh, we should be also there. So why somebody has to wait for one man to think about? So I'm not trying to get a pat on my back. What I'm trying to say, certain situations you may be given a KRA, the responsibility, you undertake that, then you must expect the return to that tune only. But if you go out of the box thinking, add values, definitely I can tell you there is no one to stop you within the organization or even for the newer scopes to happen in future. So that's what I would like to just mention from my side.
I think great set of insights from both of them. So I think since you guys are entering the placement season, I think let me try to break it down slightly for you guys. First is obviously an introduction question will be there. Show some energy, have some big smiles on your faces, because any interviewer would want to see that yes, you are excited about the job and passionate about it. So very useful practical tip, do that. Second is they would inquire you about either your favorite subject or a project that you've done or an internship that you've done. Please get your why right. Why is it that you were doing it? I think many times because senior leaders or leaders are interviewing you, they would want to understand whether you even understood the context in which you are operating. So get your why right, point number 2. Third point is attention to detail. Be very clear with regards to what you did, what numbers you contributed to, etc., etc. And the next layer of that is out of box thinking. So if you are given a fresh set of problem statement, for example, early morning at an airport, riders of Ola Uber are sparse. How does an organization like an Ola Uber optimize for the cost there? Or for example, I'm having a lot of ride cancellations on my app. How will you determine whether it was the rider's fault or the driver's fault, and how would you attribute it and figure out how to optimize money there? So start from first principles. Are you able to do it or not do it? Because in corporates, you will not get to solve known problems or problems where solutions are known. You'll have to be able to apply what you've learned, what he was mentioning, in that context and be able to think it through and get the job done. I think so. These are broad 3-4 inputs about your introduction, about what you've done, and for example, a fresh problem statement that you've been given, how you are able to break it down to the next level. And I think last bit of input on this is a job after this is not the end of the world. I have seen people, and I'm sure all of three of us have seen people who may not have cracked their dream job in the placement or may have been slightly delayed with regards to their entries, but have had pretty glorious careers. And the vice versa is also true, which is you've got landed your dream job, day zero, day one placement, and you've not grown well in the organization because this is just the entry. And like Sir was saying, that there are, after the entry, you need to work hard and do the things right, add value, and so on and so forth to rise in your career. So please treat it like a career. Don't unnecessarily stress out. I know the competition will be high, the pressure from everywhere will be high. Don't take it to heart. It will not help you at all. Go with a relaxed mindset and attitude and think it as just a milestone in your long journey. And my best wishes to all of you on your journey ahead.
Thank you. We're now open for Q&A. So if anybody has a question.
So my question is to Maneesh. So like currently Shein is coming back to India. So they were banned in 2022 because of privacy concern. So how Reliance will help them out to come with like whatever happened with them and how they will reposition. And earlier they were into like only online platform. Now may they will go into omni channel, or how will be their strategy? So can you?
Okay. Sheen is not part of my portfolio, but I'll give you a sense of what possible contours we are looking at there, right? Number one, the reason it was banned earlier was because of the entire construct in which they managed data, which was sitting outside of India. Reliance in general has a very simple philosophy, including for my international brands that we run. No data goes outside the boundaries of the country. Our data servers sit in India, data is partitioned, it is absolutely secure. Within my own portfolio, two brands do not see data of each other. Right? So that is one confidence that we have in our systems, ecosystem, the way we work, etc. That's been translated. Fundamentally, if you ask me, bottom line of the difference between earlier and now is that one, ensuring data privacy policy. I'm not even going into the inter-country politics, etc. It's the data sits in India. That's it. End of discussion. In terms of approach and what will be different, as you can imagine, a lot of that would remain confidential within the organization in terms of what we're looking to do. But the basics of what Shein is going to stand for is what it stood for earlier, which is how do you bring fast fashion forward through a digital mechanism for consumers. Whether that digital extends into some shades and forms and fashion of other platforms, whether we can get it to your home in 10 minutes, whether you can walk into a store and find it in some store. Those are contours that we've yet to talk about.
Thank you, sir.
Hi Manish sir, I'm Piyush. So my question to you would be, as the luxury segment in India is growing faster than ever before, a lot of companies now are trying to expand and to grow. How do we maintain exclusivity in such condition? And again, does going digital breaks the exclusivity part, because now it's accessible to everyone?
Not really. In fact, if anything, I would say it's the opposite is true, right? None of the luxury brands want to restrict accessibility. They want to restrict availability. And there's a difference between the two. What digital is allowing us to do is it's allowing us to create awareness amongst audiences that were not aware of these brands. And we have to understand India is a market where a few years back, 90% of the market was unorganized. That has now improved drastically to 85%. Right? We're talking about a 15-20% organized market, which means that people are buying those kind of brands that or products which are even unbranded. Right? And in that context, there are a lot of these brands that people don't know. What is my biggest problem for Tiffany in India, as an example? Is the fact that people don't know that Tiffany exists in India. They know the brand Tiffany. But when I tell them that Tiffany is available in India, oh really? We have 2 stores at the moment. Right? Those 2 stores are what are creating the accessibility issue. And the Tiffany.co.in website is what is breaking that accessibility issue, because that is where I'm allowing consumers to discover. Today, 80% of the orders I get through my website on Tiffany are actually still processed at the store, but these are orders from outside the city where customers discover that Tiffany exists in India. They have the affordability. By definition, they are my target audience. They're buying. I've had products worth 1.3, 1.4 crores selling through online transactions, right? From a tier 2 town. So it is not about restricting access. In fact, if anything, every brand wants to have more of the right audience getting access to the brand. So digital is actually helping me do that beautifully.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I have a question about Blinkit. So what I love about Blinkit is its assortment, because pricing, I feel that it is significantly higher priced than the competitors. So if I look at the assortment, it is a perfect balance of familiarity and novelty. And if I look at certain categories like staples, it is pushing its private label. Other categories, it is pushing the higher margin SKUs. In some categories, it is focusing on impulse purchase. So what I want to know that how are you, what factors are you considering in deciding the assortment for a single pin code?
Thanks for your love for the platform. Okay, I'll come to that part maybe later. Okay, so with regards to assortment, I think again the number one metric. So first of all, be very clear that we can't push anything. It's always the consumers who decide whether they want, and they are now not spoiled for choices. The cost of switching from a Blinkit to a competitor app is absolutely zero, and even to e-com. So I think that is something which will never work. So we are very obsessively focused on our end consumers and the kind of searches that we are getting on the platform. With regards to, we even are monitoring very specifically the uniqueness. For example, if you want Coke, and if I offer Pepsi to you, you will not buy it. You possibly would switch to another platform and get Coke for you. The trade-off may be between a 300 ml bottle and a 500 ml bottle, and so on and so forth. And those are the kind of choices that sometimes we end up making in the larger scheme of things. But with regards to the brand preferences and what sells through, and if we still realize that the 300 ml demand is much higher, that is something which will end up being in the store. So I think that is something that as a platform we can't dictate. With regards to the assortment, again, going back to first principles, you determine based on the number of searches. What, for example, in a pin code, if you have high number of pet users, pet may be cats or dogs, what kind of pets, you keep it. If you realize that that particular pin code doesn't generate that much of demand with regards to pet, you won't keep that assortment as much as you, for example, may keep a sports assortment if there are a lot of people who are enthusiastic about sports. So it is about catering to that end consumer need, and the assortment also undergoes a very rapid churn. For example, a weekend assortment is different from a weekday assortment. A morning assortment is different from an evening assortment. A February assortment versus an April assortment may have undergone a drastic shift just because an IPL is there around the corner, and so on and so forth. So I think That is the kind of modeling that we do and back calculation with regards to the supply chain performance. On your point on pricing, I think as a platform, it's if you compare it over a period of time across most products, we do try to keep price parity. We have never, I should not say we, I am an ex-employee. Blinkit has never claimed to be a discount player, so to say, to heavily discount the products and hence create a competitive advantage for itself. However, we are very clear that we want to give most value to the end consumer. And by that, we will always try to keep the best assortment for you and the highest order of reliability and the shortest possible lead times to service you. And I think those are the North Star metrics for which Blinkit always aspires to. I hope that answers.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. My name is Parush. I have a question for Maneesh, sir. So, sir, adding on to the Piyush point, what he added. So, let's say for a luxury brand, you told digital is helping you to get the accessibility. So, my question is, when someone say luxury, it is an experience altogether. So, let's say when you just mentioned that someone from tier 2 ordered a 1.3 CR watch. So, how do you manage that order to be online? As in, let's say if there's a watch, I know how it feels, and if an avid user of that particular watch, I will order it. But let's say if I'm a new user and I'm ordering from Azio Lux, there are order AOV of more than 1 lakh. So how you will manage to get that customer to order, and how you let's say if there is a product and there's a small wear and tear in the particular thing, what is the cost you will incur, how you will manage that? So just wanted to understand that process.
It's a beautiful question because this is something that I'm very passionate about over the last many years. What is an online purchase?
Online purchase, let's say for if a product for me, if a product which is high on price, I will first experience it, then maybe I will get it online, or kind of a convenience that if I'm getting.
So when we normally say online purchase, in our minds, the definition of that online purchase is I went to a website or an app, placed an order, it got delivered to my home, and that's an online purchase. Correct?
Correct.
No, that's not an online purchase. Today's world, the consumer does not differentiate online and offline. We are talking about online and offline because we are sitting in a classroom. In the customer's head, when the customer wants to buy in a store, what is the first thing that they do?
Search online.
Thank you. Right? Now whether they search on Google, they search on Amazon, they search. First thing, whether you're a luxury customer or non-luxury, doesn't matter. Your journey for a purchase is starting well before you walk into a store or walk into a website. Right? An online purchase today has become very nebulous in definition, which is why in my mind longer term omni-channel is, from a retailer's perspective, the way to go. Today's world is about digital influence, both digitally influenced online consumers and digitally influenced offline consumers. And I'm saying this contradicting myself because the consumer is not online or offline. The behavior is. How many of you have never purchased online? 0 hands. How many have never purchased offline? 0 hands. 100% of people today are online shoppers and 100% are offline shoppers. The consumer is not online, offline. Now coming back to answer your question more specifically. Let's take the same example, the 1.3 crore Tiffany engagement ring that we sold. What does Tiffany stand for? Why would anybody buy a 1.3 crore engagement ring from a Tiffany? Forget online. Why would anybody buy a 1.3 crore engagement ring from Tiffany?
Value, associated value.
At the end of the day, it's a definition of the love that you're showing to your fiancé at that point in time, right? 1.3 crores is putting a value to an emotion. Correct? Is that all there is to it? No, there's a ton of other things. There's the beauty of the product. The Tiffany setting ring is done in a manner where the beauty of that diamond stands out like no other diamond in the world. There's tons of stories that I can tell you around it, which I'll encourage you to go to the website and see. But all of those, if you ask me very honestly, are not the reasons why a customer is buying a Tiffany ring. Right? Now, coming back again to your question. The customer is discovering the fact that they can buy Tiffany when they search for engagement rings. Now, the customer sitting in Hubli discovered that in Hubli they can buy a Tiffany ring. But like you said, how will that ring look on my hand? How big is it? All of those questions come up, and typically engagement rings in India, particularly at that price points, are not bought as surprises. They're bought jointly by the partners. Risk of return. Yeah, so the purchase, or most of these high value purchases are purchases where our website has helped the customer get in touch with the store. The store's done WhatsApp video calls, all kinds of communications with the customers. There's a current ongoing case where the customer is looking to buy in Bangalore. It's a metro by itself. In Bangalore, wants a fairly expensive ring. It's in multi-crores. We're actually sending the ring to the city. We're having one of our advisors go down, engage with the customer in that city. Go to the customer's place. So luxury is about experiences. We can afford to create experiences for customers. We create those experiences. Digital helps us in getting customers to dip into that experience. If I extend the same thing into an online to offline world in a city, if you're sitting in the same city, you'll be surprised how many appointments we get for booking. How many appointments get booked for our stores, for Tiffany again as an example, from within Mumbai and Delhi, which is where my 2 stores are. In fact, because I have a website where you can take an appointment for the store, for coming to the store, customers perceive Tiffany to be much more exclusive than they would have perceived otherwise. That appointment is actually nothing. It's a marketing gimmick. Sorry. You can walk into a store and nobody's going to stop you. My Tiffany store is empty half the time. Right? I mean, how many people are going to walk into a Tiffany? But by calling it an appointment and not saying walk into our store, I'm creating that aura of exclusivity for customers who are buying worth 3 crores, 4 crores, 5 crores in the store at the end of the day. Hope I'm able to answer the question.
To summarize it from what I understood, that digital gives you the accessibility that there is one brand, and when it comes to do the final order, there should be a personalized experience. So what Azure Lux is doing it right now, what I understood, that if you are going to order something, there is an option to talk to the assistant. So I didn't try it as of now. So is it like, let's say if I'm ordering a Armani suit of 3 lakh or 4 lakh, so there should be a personal assistant who will assist you with the help of video call or something like that?
Absolutely. That's what luxury is about, right? Why do you think luxury websites don't have chatbots? I mean, chatbots are the easiest thing to implement today. Data science guys, very easy, right? Why do none of my websites have chatbots? The last thing I want to do is commoditize the experience. I want you to talk to a human being, because luxury is about human touch. It's about the human touch elevates experience.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hi. I'm Shreya. I have a question for Narendra. You spoke about conceptualization depending on your customer segmentation and now also leveraging data analytics. So I wanted to know how you leverage the two in terms of conceptualizing product designs for the upcoming generations and for the future as well.
As I mentioned that the Samsonite deals into different brands. We have about 5 brands under its umbrella. It deals with different set of customers, different price point and different expectations in terms of design. Like when I mentioned about the color, Samsonite will never bring you the bright red and the burgundies of the world, but American Tourister will. So what happens is, the moment your target audience is clear, what is the expectation of a high-end business traveler, and then keeping that profile in mind when we are designing the product, you are more or less there. Yeah, the country to country, only few things changes. Like for example, India is a very dusty country, so therefore the lighter shade of Samsonite do not sell so much. Although it looks nice on the screen, but then people actually do not use it, because just one travel and then you have a shabby bag with you, left with you. So once having understood your target audience, their requirement, their behavioral pattern, your whole designing process starts from there onward. So for Samsonite, it is this: the American Tourister, which targets to the youth, and the youth between certain age group would prefer to have those elements. It is nothing to do with what other brands are doing, because since we lead the market, so definitely we are not dependent upon what others are doing. What we have to be always focusing and we keep focusing upon is the actual user's requirement, and that we keep changing time to time and keep modifying it to the extent required. But the DNA remains the same. Like for example, you will not get very serious product in American Tourister. It will be always very funky. You know the bag. I don't know whether you have seen a bag of American Tourister which is circular in shape. Have anybody else? It's a new launch, but generally the bags are flat, right? You have got two different halves. The flat. Sometimes it is 50-50, sometimes it is 80-20, but generally they are flat or contour at the edges. But the American Tourister has come up exactly like this, the circular bag. And the youths are enjoying it. So the DNA, what you have as a brand, you have to keep it intact. That we try to keep it intact, but keep fine tuning it depending upon the target audience requirement, and we keep segregating the channel of distribution also accordingly. Like for example, you have got an airport store, you'll not find American Tourister there. You'll find only Samsonite. And the department store, definitely you'll have a heavy American Tourister. Online, yes, the tail line of American Tourister, and the hypermarket, the chameleon, and the end line of and the special line of American Tourister. So those SKU by price, not only by price, but actually differentiate a product itself. You can't always, have one American Tourister look like available at a hypermarket at 50% discount, and you try and fool around with the customer by selling the same thing at 100 rupees somewhere. You can't do that. So we have differentiated product lines, we have differentiated outlook, meaning by virtue of look itself, you will be able to define that, oh, this is not so expensive and this is expensive. Because the grade of the material, if I use 1000 denier, the denier is the thickness and the style of the material, and somewhere I use 500, you will be able to make it out that this is not that great. And by virtue of that, we segregate the lines. So SKU management is a big science at our end, and touchwood, we have been able to manage it so successfully that we never imagined that we'll be able to do this. When we were doing it initially, there was so much of resistance. The channel partners, the distribution partners, our own teammates. Forget about the outside. You have the first enemy is our own teammates that will be thrown out of the market. When you don't do this, you'll be out of the market. He'll not deal with you. So convincing, firstly with our own teammates, and then after getting it down the line to the market, and ensure that segregation happens exactly as you want it to be. Nothing is called accurate, but at least you achieve something called reliable. So that's how we are handling.
Got it. Thank you.
My question was to Narendra sir. So you mentioned that a Samsonite kind of replicates the content that they do globally because the customers think of the brand as an international brand. But there are brands who actually kind of regionalize some content, like Gucci has Alia Bhatt. So they do campaigns with regional celebrities and influencers also. So as a brand, how do I decide if I should be taking the international content or I should go ahead with something more regional that my audience will understand?
So the periodicity of buying another bag will be definitely much different than buying maybe an apparel or maybe a the other category you mentioned. Why I said that international has been working well for us, because we tried both, and somehow by virtue of our experience we are saying we define ourselves as a brand that let there be only the international campaign run across the globe, meaning including India, because as much you try to create that regional touch, you lose, because see, we are banking upon what? The trust coming in from there. It is not that last 5 years of work and hard work and I try to claim that I opened up so many stores and this and that. It is not the basis. Frankly speaking, this is not. It is the hard work done by the international, and we are just encashing upon. What we are trying to do is, of course, we are tailor making the whole thing, making the dots connected, and the channel of distribution is well managed, handling the customer service, and the SKU replenishment, which is much bigger a task than today in today's world, because the predictability, the forecasting is so tough today. You have a trend of, for example, the gray and the black have been in trend in last 2 quarters, and suddenly in the third quarter you find that the other five which were selling the least have come up as a hero. But you can't manage that because our production line needs 5 months back the ordering process for the ingredient, the mold, because it's not a stitching. The complexity is very high. So there's a bigger difficulty lies beyond what we are discussing here. The SKU management, everything else can be managed. But then what about replenishment? The speed at which you will be able to manage that cycle to ensure you do not lose the customers, or at least do not उसको नाराज तो मत करो अगर कुछ नहीं कर सकते तो.
If I may, if you've got a couple of minutes, can I
Sure,
give
sure.
one more perspective to that? Given that we deal with a large number of brands, right? This is a study that we do often, and this is a debate we have with all our brand principals globally. From all the data that we see, local content works the best. There is no debate, no question around it. But global brands often equate it to saying fair local content works well, valid point. Take an example of any brand that's created within India, running within India. Will you allow every store to create local content for the store? Why? You don't trust the store to do a good job. Right? The problem that global brands face when they come to countries like India, or for that matter any country, is will the partner they're working with or their own team, many countries they have their own teams, will that team be able to do a good job or not? And that is the reason most global brands mandate that their content be used. Now, how do you break that cycle? Different approaches. There are brands which are so particular about this that they don't allow you flexibility. So we've said, fair enough. Because we are partners of the brand in India, you want the brand to succeed in India. You don't want us to create local content. You have your guidelines. Here's my ask. I want this kind of a campaign, this kind of creative for Diwali. Please create and give it to me. No problem. Works beautifully. And we've had many of our brands doing Indian festivals shot by them globally and sharing the creatives with us. We understand the local market, they don't. Right? They're happy to take that input and create it. Right? There are brands where the brand is so particular that they say ambassadors can only be global ambassadors. We said, no problem. India has a number of Bollywood stars. Tiffany now has Ranveer as one of the campaign, right? How did that happen? Because we took them to globally saying, we want somebody for India, but here's a guy who can actually work for you globally. So we're bringing that flavor. And then there are brands which say, listen, we are very particular about our brand. Make sure you follow these guidelines. If we ever see you violating these guidelines, here's the 10,000 penalties that you're going to have. For those, we apply our creativity. Some brands there go a little more stickler, saying everything needs to be pre-approved by me. No problem. We build that into our timelines when we are looking at creating campaigns. And then there are brands that say, please go ahead, do what you want to do. We go ahead and do what we want. So, local content works best. There is no question about that. Flexibility for using local content for international brands is dictated by the global teams. Our ability to convince them of what we are saying, the value of what we bring to the table, is what will allow them to either give us some or more flexibility in terms of how local content can be used, created, etc. And then we do a little cheating, which is we don't create content, we let influencers create content and push it out from their handles.
Thank you.
Sorry, let me add to this from a FMCG perspective, if I may. Yeah, so I think both of them mentioned that the DNA of the brand has to remain intact. For example, you would have heard of a brand called Surf Excel, and you would have heard of the tagline Daag Achhe Hain, which is globally called Dig, which is dirt is good. Now, in an Indian context, a mother-son relationship or that relationship between two friends may be valued more, whereas in Japan, something else in that context may be valued more. And that's where, within the same guidelines, you slightly tweak the advertisement to suit to the end consumer with regards to bringing that cultural nuance, not just from a festive context, but also what one values in that particular region. In an FMCG context, for example, a toothpaste or a tea, the flavors are also different. So you create, and flavors may even be different from an Eastern India to a Western India, where one region may like a spicy flavored toothpaste, whereas the other may want something else. For a brand like Dove, you may have the same DNA, but Indians do prefer more lather on their hair when they're washing with Dove shampoo compared to their European counterparts. And that's where you tweak the formulation to cater to that specific need. Local is also relevant in context where, for example, an Ayurveda kicks in suddenly and creates a temporary disruption. And how is it that you are able to combat that and either win that battle or lose the battle or create something in that domain? Similarly, for example, worldwide, Unilever is, I think, the largest player in the deodorant segment. And here, a fog comes in and disrupts the market, and market only in India, by saying the 1,000 sprays or whatever, gas, hair, gas, and all that context. But it has not disrupted us, again, sorry for me saying us, Unilever globally in that context, but in the Indian context, it has. So I think that is where the global versus local nuances have to be always understood, and you should always have timely responses, and that is where sometimes the global structures actually do become bottlenecks, where a competition has responded, and since you've not anticipated that, and you need that 10 set of approvals to make it happen, you've already lost half the battle. So I think that check and balance has to be brought in.
Do we have any more doubts?
So last mile delivery is like a very consistent cost in e-commerce, and particularly in quick commerce we can't club orders and reduce that cost. So how do you think that can be reduced in a 10 to 15 minutes delivery, and how can AI and data science can be leveraged to optimize that cost?
Sure. So I think with regards to order clubbing, these are conscious choices that each platform would, for example, independently make. So if I club an order, the delivery lead time to the end consumer may get impacted, and the platform may choose that I don't want to do it because a cost may be cheaper. Some platforms have gone ahead with, for example, the option of bicycles for riders, or I don't know what they are called, electric vehicles that go at the speed of maximum 20 kilometers per hour, and which saves you in terms of cost because the fuel etc. is much lower, but impacts your delivery timelines. And that is where you actually end up looking at a lot of data to understand if I go from an 8-minute delivery, let's say the store distance remains the same, versus my mode of transport changes, 8-minute versus a 14-minute delivery, what is the stickiness with regards to the consumers? Whether he switches to another platform, the conversion remains intact or not. So these are the kind of data points that you check with regards to increase of timelines, and we have a lot of this when there is surge of demand. What is the level of conversion? Even in lead period, if you're giving him in 14, giving it to her in 14 minutes, is that sufficient or not? So these are the kind of data points you would look at. The next way to optimize cost is obviously figuring out the inefficiencies with regards to the rider journey. And how is it that you can bring the radius smaller? So for example, if my average lead time is 20 minutes, I'm making the journey 20 minutes one side. So 40 minutes I complete one journey. So in 2 hours I'll be able to complete X number of journeys. If I reduce that to 15 minutes, within an hour I'll be able to complete 2 orders. I bring it to 10 minutes, I'm able to do 3 orders within the same hour. And how do you then incentivize them, whether you incentivize them per orders, per hours? So a huge set of data science goes into it. Similarly, since these are all gig workers, you have a order spike or an order surge in, for example, a 5 p.m. to a 8:39 p.m. kind of domain, and similarly in the morning from 6 a.m. to 8:39 a.m. kind of domain. And how is it that you maximize your number of riders in that period? And when there is lean order pattern which is there, how do you give them, incentivize them during that period to come more, and so on and so forth? So there are a lot of levers that one can use to influence cost, and these are all 100% backed by data to arrive at those decisions and create the feedback loops to understand. For example, if you, like I was saying, go from a two-wheeler to a EV kind of model where the speed is capped, the decision is reversible. You immediately see within 2-3 days the retention numbers getting impacted, and you roll back that decision. So I think it plays a significant role, and not just with last mile, even in the store operations cost. For example, for a 10-minute delivery, if you've placed, for example, 8 items, you need to minimize the walking path of the picker. Correct? You need to pick 8 separate items. Based on the order history, you place the items in a manner in the store where you know that, for example, a tel and a atta are normally ordered together, or fruits of two particular kind, or fruits plus something else is normally ordered together. How do you place them in the store in close proximity to each other so my walking time gets minimized? Similarly, when I pick one item, move to the next item, how is my end-to-end walking time minimized? And how is it that when my last item gets picked, I am closest to my delivery partner so as to hand it over to him in the least possible time? So at each node within supply chain and even in marketing, I think there is tremendous use case for data science to add value there.
So my question is for Narendra sir and Maneesh sir. I want to know that since both of you are Samsonite being the only taking Samsonite and Aviral taking only the luxury brands, that if there are only 8 lakh people who comes in the HNIs and UHNIs, why are we just focusing on them, and how do they make profit in India as these are the only repetitive customers? For example, if we take an example of Thomas Pink, which was earlier there in India, a part of LVMH group, but LVMH had to first close down its stores and then eventually had to sell off its own business. So how do we just market these people, and why?
As I mentioned, that the Samsonite do not deals into only Samsonite as a brand per se in Indian market. The percentage I can't really define here, but the larger portion of the business happens through other brands. So we collaborate. Each of the brand they complement. It's not that we only target upon this set of the elites only. Of course, you have to cater to them, but you can't cater to them through the second in line the product. They have to be catered through only Samsonite, and whatever is required to be done is being done to catch them right at that point of sales. Like for example, you may not find Samsonite at the online. I don't want them to be. It's not that they can't order. Frankly speaking, the Samsonite is available. You can go online, you can order, but it do not come under the influence of provoking you to buy by virtue of XYZ. Those things are not there. So you have to pay the MRP. We do deliver it to the customers directly for the matter of convenience. But we don't play that hard ball as it is required to be played to be there online, to be active. However, the second brand, the third brand, there the whole the tactics, the whatever is required to be practiced, it is there. So I don't see any problem in handling each individual brands targeting to different target audience and different price points.
So, just wanting to understand, how do you grow only in the Samsonite space? How do you reach out to possibly more consumers, increase your market share there?
See, frankly speaking, that is we are blessed. in that price point and in that category, we don't have, the competition in real sense. So we are quite happy with whatever we are getting and generating the business. So maybe this example may not fit into this product, but probably for somebody else.
Let me take a shot at that, right? The easy part of the question first. Reliance is not catering to the top 3%. Reliance Brands is. Reliance is catering to 1.4 billion. Why did we create Reliance Brands separately? We created Reliance Brands separately because we acknowledge that you cannot treat all customers with the same lens. When you're catering to the masses, it needs a very different kind of mindset, mentality, approach, team for that matter. And therefore, we created Reliance Brands with the idea of saying, when I'm talking to this ultra HNI, all the premium segments of the market, I need to bring a very different mindset to the game. Keeping that in mind, that's why the teams were created separately. The advantage we run also, and the underlying question that you're actually asking is how do you be profitable if you don't have scale? That's the fundamental question. And the answer to that question is by ensuring that a lot of the infrastructure remains constant and common. Right? If you were to look at any individual brand that I run, no brand would be a very large brand in terms of scale or volume from a Reliance Brands perspective. But if you were to look at Reliance Brands as a whole, it will be larger than a large number of retailers in the country. And a lot of that is by managing costs, by keeping the infrastructural elements which I was referring to earlier common. The common technology platforms, the common processes, which is allowing us to leverage economies of scale. And then it's a question of how smart we are about marketing to customers. Because marketing to customers, if I started using the Times of India to advertise a Tiffany or a Bali or any of these, then that's my fault, right? Then I'm not doing a good job of it. You won't see me there. It is about finding the right media partners to communicate to the audience where the audience is present. And that's why digital is so brilliant for us, because digital can actually target a segment of one if I choose to target a segment of one. And that's why for luxury, I personally believe that digital is the only way you can actually reach out to consumers.
Sorry, though I'm not a marketer and the question was not asked of me, but let me also try to share some perspective. So, have any of you seen the movie Air?
Yes.
Nike?
Yes.
And do you think after Jordan getting signed, people from Adidas and Converse would have switched to a Nike?
Yes.
It was not even I think, basketball shoe brand by then, and suddenly it became the largest brand in that segment. You have to, I think, somewhere make a choice whether you want to be a BMW, Audi, Ferrari, Mercedes, or a Maruti. I think, and if you play in that segment, that is a segment which is normally a highly profitable segment. Yeah, the top 3% have the largest amount of money across the world, obviously, and they are looking for ways to spend that money. And if you appeal to them, I think you can sell multiple products to the same person, same 3%, and generate far high revenue and bottom line. I think that's the long and short of, I think, what you're trying to understand, but not all can be a Ferrari or a BMW and Audi and sustain it for a prolonged period of time. And I think that's the battle that needs to be fought at a very different level. And obviously in your textbooks you would have read how to fight those tough battles. But I think if you were worried about whether you'll get scale there or not without catering to the larger folks, I think that is something which will never be a bottleneck, either for the top line growth or for the bottom line growth.
With that, I think we will come to a small closure for now. We really hope to see you again someday soon also. Before we call it a day, could you give like one small piece of advice, probably a line or something, a quote or something that has inspired you to get to where you are today for all of us, so that, we could also gain some inspiration from there and find our perspective in life?
Yeah. I would like to repeat the same line what I ended up mentioning it while describing, replying to some other question. Is that be relevant to the organization and look forward to keep consistently, keep thinking out of the box, and value addition should be your daily feed. Value addition, if it is not there, I'm not sure what could be the other way to rise in any organization. Change, of course, over a period of time, one should change from organization A to B to C. But doing things right while you have a plate in front of you, full focus with value addition, out of box thinking does pay. It paid me. Actually, I was the fastest one to rise in the form of I was offered various other countries to head, but since I had a choice to whether to be here or to go overseas operations, so I remained here. But otherwise, it has given me immense, benefits. So out of box thinking and be always in that question mode, that what can I do something which is can add value. It shouldn't be only limited to the KRA and the responsibility what you carry on day to day. This does help.
So I was trying to figure out which one to use here. The one that I keep at the back of my head very often, with a slightly different context from how it was originally meant, is this: be the change you want to see. It's a very commonly used phrase, but my interpretation of that and how I apply it in my life at least, there are variables that you can control, there are variables that you can't control. Learn to differentiate between the two. And for the ones that you can control, go out and do everything you can to get everything that you need. And for the ones that you can't control, stop cribbing.
I think I'll go with two in mind. One is, I think at this stage, think big, start small, act fast, and Nike, just do it. But I think also, since you are into the placement season, I think relax. What I mentioned earlier, don't stress out too much. Things will work out for you guys eventually if you stay the course. And enough opportunities are there for good folks. I think while we may say that job opportunities are limited, I think if you sit on this side of the panel, you'll realize we are searching for good talent to join our organizations. I think that's where we are. And be that candidate, like both of them described. I think enough opportunities will be there, not just now, but in future as well. So all the best once again, guys.
As we close, I would like to express my gratitude to all of our panelists, because I genuinely enjoyed all of their insights, and I believe you did as well. Not only did they manage to get our attention, but also keep it. I would also like to thank Henry for directing this conversation so that we were able to gain the most out of it. And I would also like to thank all of you for being an active part of this discussion. Lastly, I would like to invite our faculty members, Professor Alan D'Souza and Professor Nilay Ajnik, and also the CFO of Geo Institute, Mr. Pramod Jain, to felicitate our panelists. Thank you.
I think on behalf of all of us, would also like to thank the organizers for a very seamless event. I think Henry, you, and I think Sujata and the team who are coordinating with us, I think it was quite impeccable. I know it was very challenging to find the slot. I think many of us gave multiple slots, but I'm very happy that it could happen. And my heartfelt thanks to both my fellow panelists for their valuable insights. I think it was a great learning for me also. And I hope you guys take away a lot from this. Thank you.